Good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Ripley, and I lead Standards Australia's Strategic Initiatives team, helping us to make sure we have the right standards and solutions in place in critical areas like the one we're talking about today. It is a very great pleasure to welcome you all to this event today, hosted in partnership with the National AI Centre as part of the Responsible AI Network. For the next hour, we're going to talk about the rise of artificial intelligence and why standards are so important in this story. We'll shed some light on where AI standards are up to and what businesses need to keep an eye out for. Before we launch in, I'd first like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, traditional custodians of the land from which we join you today from Standards Australia's office in Sydney. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which all of you are dialing in. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with us today. Today's webinar is designed to introduce the world of AI standards and why we need them. We have an amazing panel lined up to delve into these questions. I'll introduce you to them in a moment, but first, we'll hear from our partners in this work, the National AI Centre, and then I'll give a brief introduction to AI standards. We have a huge audience today. We're very pleased with the response and we'd like to hear from you. So some very quick housekeeping. You'll see 3 icons on your screen there. For any tech issues, please use the chat. We will run a poll today to understand our audience and how familiar you are with standards. That's that second icon there you can see, so please take a moment to vote over the next 5 or 10 minutes. And finally, if you have a question for our panel, please use the third icon there to submit that. We'll have some time for audience Q&A at the end. 6 months ago, OpenAI launched ChatGPT and got everyday people talking about generative AI for the first time. 3 months ago, over 1,000 experts called for a pause in training AI systems like ChatGPT. 3 weeks ago, Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, a key player in the development of AI over the last 5 decades, went public on the existential threats he fears AI might pose. And just last week, lots of you were probably watching as OpenAI's CEO testified before the US Senate, calling for AI regulation, citing the risk of significant harm from the use of technology such as that released by his company. At the same time, there is acknowledgement and there are real life examples, whether that's in healthcare, education, many more, of the immense benefits AI can offer if it is designed and used responsibly, securely, with safeguards in place and with humans at its centre. So what's the key takeaway from all this buzz? How we govern AI is extremely important. So there really couldn't be a better time for the establishment of the Responsible AI Network, a fantastic initiative of the Australian Government's of CSIRO's National AI Centre. Standards Australia is really proud to be a founding knowledge partner of this network, and our mission in this partnership is really to help Australian governments and businesses get the most out of the standardisation work that we contribute to internationally, and as one among many, add to the landscape of responsible AI implementation in Australia. So it's my great pleasure to now give the floor to Rita Arrigo, Strategic Engagements Manager at the National AI Centre, to give a welcome from them. Rita, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire, and what a fantastic introduction. I'd like to welcome you all. We're so excited to have our first workshop, and I'd like to welcome you to our workshop, Intro to Standards for Artificial Intelligence. What we've been finding is that my mouse isn't working, is that there is this accelerating wave of AI presenting a lot of concerns, which I think Claire really covered off. But we see the potential for AI to alleviate many challenges, from health to environment to societal innovation. But it's this complexity with everything generating data, and that we have a moment in time to engage in responsible AI. More AI means more benefits, from better customer experiences, improved decision making, and improved innovation with our products. But how do we achieve this kind of ability to amplify AI adoption and innovation that benefits Australia's business and community? We're looking at a pattern around starting off with getting people started with AI, getting people connected. If you've had a chance to look at the National AI Centre website, you'll see we have an ecosystem discoverability portal where you can meet and engage with a range of AI partners around Australia that are providing AI solutions. And the final pillar to our work is uplifting responsible AI, and that is part of the engagement of the Responsible AI Network. So we have this moment in time where AI is evolving, and I'm sure you heard some of those stories from Claire, and evolving in a way that we want to make it responsible and inclusive AI. Australia has been a leader in this coming up with responsible AI in the first wave, but we have a real ability to create an advantage in this area because of our leadership in this first wave of adopting responsible AI ethics and principles. And as well, as Australian, we have this ability to really see the fair go as being really important. And so I think we have this moment where we can make a massive impact in responsible AI. And the use of AI emerging is a global issue. And it's for this reason that we have been able to be successfully launching the Responsible AI Network, because what we're finding is that organisations are not cultivating trustworthy AI, and we want to be able to help support people to be able to do that. Hence the Responsible AI Network, uplifting the practice of responsible AI across Australia. And of course, we've committed to these 7 pillars around law, standards, principles, governance, technology, leadership, and design. And today is our first one around standards and how important what an impact they can make to your AI solutions. We actually launched the Responsible AI Network back in March, and it had fantastic impact, reaching 1.1 million Australians. So we know that there's a lot of interest in wanting to enable responsible AI in your organisations. So today we're going to be talking about the introduction to industrial standards for artificial intelligence in AI with Standards Australia. And we have a few more coming up. We have another one coming up with responsible AI engineering on the 8th of June. We've got responsible use of generative AI by one of our partners, Graduate Institute, and of course, more follow-up ones with Standard Australia, where we're going to break down AI concepts, terminology, and the AI life cycle. But I'd like to wrap and thank you for joining today, and I'm going to hand back over to Claire to walk you through that. Don't forget to follow us on NAIC and join the AI conversation.
Thank you so
Back
much,
over
Rita.
to you, Claire. Pleasure.
All right. I'm going to give us a quick introduction to AI standards before I introduce our panel. So we've talked a lot about the gravity of these last few months in the development of AI and last few years. Before I do a quick Standards 101, I wanted to pose a question. Why is it that we look to standards? So why have so many people tuned in today? In short, whether you're a small business, a big corporation, a policymaker, regulator, or consumer, standards provide a common language around AI. They help harmonise markets and the policy and regulatory landscape. And really importantly, developing and implementing international standards helps us ensure we get global consistency in areas like AI that do operate well beyond national borders. And we are really lucky in Australia to have some of the world's leading experts in AI helping to develop these standards, and we'll get to that. So what are standards? Standards are voluntary consensus solutions. In their simplest form, they're a set of repeatable rules that define products, systems, or processes. They allow testing and conformance, which in turn helps ensure safety, consistency, reliability, and interoperability. And our standards process in Australia and in the standards bodies we work with internationally is based on consensus, transparency, openness of participation, and a balance of representation. And these are really ingredients for building trust and confidence. Where do standards fit in? In the emerging conversation around AI, standards are one part of the toolkit, and we acknowledge that they sit alongside policy, regulation, and the law. Anyone who has read a newspaper or turned on the TV in the last few weeks would have heard a lot of calls for a more active approach from regulators in respect to AI. And in this context, standards are one way that compliance can be demonstrated against a particular set of regulatory requirements. Uh, and as I've said, standards are built through a process of consensus between industry, government, and community interests. Why do standards matter? And we'll hear much more from our panel on this. Again, in short, they ensure quality. They can help build greater public and user trust in products and services. Standards really drive innovation and competitiveness in new technologies such as AI, at the same time, while helping ensure they're designed and used responsibly and securely. Really importantly as well, standards help the world go round. They increase interoperability and decrease barriers to trade. As I said, we'll hear more from our experts on this. So what do I mean when I talk about international AI standards? AI standards are being written in several international, regional, and national standards development organizations around the world. But ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, and the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, are unique. They hold particular value for Australia because of their broad membership and one country, one vote system. We are really proud to have a large and talented group of Australian AI experts participating in the development of AI standards at ISO and the IEC, and two of them are on our panel today. With 17 standards published currently and 30 more in the pipeline, our experts ensure that these standards are relevant to the Australian context and that of our trading partners. It is a collective global effort, but we're really proud that in this respect, Australia punches above our weight. As you can see there, oh yeah, oh good. So again, 17 standards published, 30 in the pipeline. What do some of these look like? Some key ones to note: AI concepts and terminology. Establishing a common language is really critical and often the starting point for standards when dealing with an emerging technology. Bias in AI systems. This focuses on trustworthiness in AI and provides guidance on how to assess bias and fairness and how to address unwanted bias too. AI management system standard. This one is in development and expected towards the end of this year. This is a big one for AI standards and for the sector. It's a flagship standard. It sets out a framework for good practice in AI governance and processes that an organization needs to follow to achieve those objectives. Critically, it will provide a pathway to certification for organizations using AI. And the last one here, also under development, provides guidance for organizations performing AI system impact assessments, including how and when to perform these assessments across the AI lifecycle. So today's webinar is all about introducing AI standards. And sure enough, our poll is showing that most of you who've dialed in, so over 70%, I believe, sort of identify yourselves as still getting started or as beginners on standards. So you come to the right place. A core mission of the Responsible AI Network is to provide practical guidance for stakeholders using AI. And Standards Australia is really excited to be launching a paper alongside our event today, developed with the support of the National AI Centre. The paper covers the sorts of topics we're discussing today, provides an overview of AI standards, but includes more detail on those currently published and in the pipeline, the standards process, how they're developed, and we also introduce Standards Australia's live data and digital standards dashboard, which provides a snapshot of AI standards that are currently published and under development, and is regularly updated. So check that out. Follow Standards Australia and our partners, the National AI Centre, on LinkedIn so that you don't miss the release later today. It's now time to introduce our panel and hear from the experts. Don't forget to submit your questions. We'll leave some time at the end for those. But I'm really proud to introduce to you our 4 panelists today. First, we have Aurelie Jacquet, an independent consultant who advises ASX 20 companies on the responsible implementation of AI. She also works as principal research consultant on responsible AI for CSIRO's Data 61. Aurelie is a standards champion. She's the chair of Standards Australia's AI Technical Committee, representing Australia in international AI standardisation efforts. Next, welcome to Dr. Kobi Leins, an Honorary Senior Fellow of King's College London, Advisory Board Member of the Carnegie AI and Equality Initiative, and a valued member of Standards Australia's AI Technical Committee. Leins is an international lawyer, published author, and provides strategic advice around technology and data, among other things. Louise McGrath, welcome Louise, is Head of Industry Development and Policy at the Australian Industry Group. With broad experience in international and trade policy, Louise promotes the interests of AI group members on current and emerging issues, ensuring they have a voice at all levels of government and in multilateral forums. And finally, last but not least, Adam Stingemore is General Manager, Engagement and Communications at Standards Australia. Adam's responsible for leading Standards Australia's engagement and strategic delivery, international, comms and design, research and analysis, and events teams. Adam joined the organisation in 2009 after a career in business and the law, and has been a member of the exec team since 2015. Welcome, Adam. So that is our awesome panel today, and I want to just launch straight in. Louise, I will start with you. Australian Industry Group represents the interests of more than 60,000 businesses in Australia that together employ over 1 million staff. What does the rise of AI mean for your members, and where do standards fit in?
Great. Well, thanks very much, Claire, and thanks to Standards Australia and CSIRO for hosting and organising this webinar. It's really timely. So as you say, Claire, we have a wide membership, and our members come from across all sectors of the economy, and AI is already shaping business models, production processes, services, and the workplace. Standards doesn't just ensure a level playing field, it really builds the playing field. It means that companies can use the technology confident that it will work with existing technology, it will be compliant, and more importantly, it will be safe for customers and staff. Safety in the workplace is of crucial importance to our members, both physical and psychological safety. And the use of AI in the workplace needs to support that work. AI groups work with the Responsible AI Network will very much focus on how AI is used in the workplace. Secondly, no company is an island. Large or small, all businesses are part of a supply chain, and standardising or harmonising the railguards around AI mean that companies can more easily use AI to support supply chain resilience and be compliant with both their customers and their suppliers. And finally, harmonising standards means that whatever new business model or product is developed by an Australian company, it instantly has an international market. And why is that important? Well, who remembers when you couldn't take your mobile phone to Japan and use it? Today, that seems crazy. AI is just moving too quickly and too broadly for us to miss this opportunity to collectively work on international standards. And I think this is a great start to that conversation. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you very much, Louise. Adam, I've got a provocative one for you. Why do we even need standards in the AI conversation? Won't they just create red tape and stifle innovation?
What a great question, Claire. I'll answer your question with a very simple no, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail about why. So at one level, AI standards will generate themselves, right? Because the market is moving and technology will continue to connect. But there's a really, really important and valuable role for the standards that we develop through the international system. So starting with a common language to allow for people to procure, to allow for governments to regulate, to allow for assurance to be undertaken, and to allow for further development of technologies. We need that's a single language in the world set through international standards for us to be able to work. But then the second point, which is really, really important for us here in Australia, and we're very lucky to have Aurelie and Kobi with us today, is that they're set by the right people. So through our processes, we bring together professional associations, academics, government, community interest groups, and technology companies to set those standards together. And industry sort of at two poles, right? So from the AI group pole of people who are sort of implementing and using and subject to this technology, but also the tech companies that are creating it. And by bringing all of those different interest groups together and then rolling that up through the world, we're going to get much better outcomes. And if I can just go back to sort of your opening remarks, Claire, and to readers as well as I finish, in the last month in Australia, we've seen a huge amount of reporting on AI, and we've seen almost every time you turn on the television, sort of the impact that this is having on us. And as a global community that's trying to wrangle with this question, we cannot have every single sovereign government trying to solve the same problem in a slightly different way. So the international standards piece is really, really important right now. The counterfactual of doing it without international standards, in my view, is absolute chaos. I hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Adam. Really highlighted some of the strengths of the standardization process and why Australia participates the way we do. And it's a great segue to our two standards committee sort of technical experts on the panel. Aurelie, I'll go to you first. You and Kobi are leaders not only nationally, but also internationally in the development of AI standards. Over 50 countries have come together. In fact, I think it's more than that, to write these AI standards at the International Standardization Organization for Standardization and the Electrotechnical Commission. Why are they so crucial to the uptake of responsible AI? And what benefits do standards provide organizations as they develop and use AI?
Thanks, Claire. I'll just take a step back because we have a few people that are not very familiar with standards here. So I just say, first, actually, you may not see it, but you are all using standards already. If you've been through the procurement process, you would be asked to certify against ISO 27001 on cybersecurity. When as part of the building codes that's developed for your house, like you may also have to comply with standards. So it's built in. So while you may not have come across it because it's more an invisible part, you've actually already experienced standards in the quality and the safety they provide. And that's exactly what we're doing again here with AI. It's nothing different. Standards are used to effectively give you a best practice and actually use a new tool like AI well. So when you get started with AI or whatever time of maturity you are at with AI, standards are here to give you what's a best practice that's recognized by those 50 countries. For example, we look at the data piece. What do you need to do with data? What's the required data quality for AI? How different it is from your existing practice? What are the uplifts you need to make? So that's one of the questions the standards help you answer. The second is, how do I test my AI model? Well, again, that's where the standards help you. Least but not last, how do I risk manage my AI models? Again, that's where the standards give you those answers. So first, it's helping you uplift. The second, it helps you with interoperability. If you've got best practice that's recognized by 50 countries that have agreed that's the way forward to develop best practice, generally, it helps you develop your AI model, let's say in Australia, but also overseas. So that gives you the capability for scale. And last but not least, it actually allows you to justify your best practice and differentiate you from, let's say, negligent or malicious actors. Way back in 2018, Dr. Finkel actually said, we need certification to distinguish ourselves from the negligent actor or the malicious actors. So at least by following and looking at the practice of AI standard, it effectively gives you a good way to say, look, this is a best practice that's been recognized by 50 countries. This is industry best practice, and therefore not being caught, hopefully, by following this process into the many accidents and incidents that happens around AI.
Thanks, Aurelie. There's some very practical examples in there of how standards affect the operations of businesses, for example. Kobi, from your perspective as a lawyer and academic in the field of data technology and human rights, can you give us a few more examples of how standards help society function and how this relates to AI?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Aurelie, for a really nice framing of how the standards can help us. I just wanted to reframe the conversation a little bit, both of the conversations actually. So standards, the very first standard was first considered to have evolved about 2.6 million years ago in relation to a particular way to cut stone that had a particular effect on its ability to be used as a tool. Standards are not new. We have used standards for a really, really long time. And if we looking at the questions and looking at the participants who are joining for the first time, if you'd like to think of standards as the beginning of the conversation, this is where we start to actually form norms. For lawyers on the call, it's almost like customary law, that we're starting to have these conversations to say, what is normalized? What are we understanding? What is it that we can do? In terms of the AI piece, which I think for many on the call, again, there's an incredible amount of hype, and this has already been mentioned on this call. Artificial intelligence was a concept that was coined in the 50s, in 1956 at a conference, when artificial was seen as a positive, and the waves of popularity of that have gone up and down over the decades. What is new now is that we're kind of in a high point of hype. And yet at the same time, we also are hearing people pulling back. There are companies saying we're not going to use certain tools. For some of us who've been in this field, we have been well aware of the power of language models for a long time. And the way that they're being used now has raised concerns that we've framed before. So how do those two things coincide? Well, the idea with the AI standards, and I see someone said it's hard to visualize, we have data standards, and Aurelie's already touched upon, and there are many more other standards that also govern how companies already run. What's missing is how directors, how executives, and how people in companies operationalize the use of AI. And I challenge the comment that we're overregulated as a country. In fact, countries that have safer guardrails are more likely to adopt technologies well and cause less harm, and to move those technologies forward in a lower risk environment. So having companies think about what their strategy is in relation to data and AI, having companies think about how they manage their data and their AI systems is fundamental to the use of these systems. They're not contradictory, and these standards that are coming are already starting to shape those conversations. The other point that's been made, and I really want to highlight, is this common language point. We're not just operating in a bubble in Australia. All of these systems cross geographic boundaries, but we're also working across areas of expertise. And the number of times I've sat in a room with the data scientists, the execs, the lawyers, include the long list, and they all talk past each other. There's not a common language that we have yet. What we're doing is, again, having that conversation where we're starting to form common language, where we're starting to identify concepts, where we can be in agreement across countries, across experts, also across hierarchies. We're having language so that people who are actually hands-on with the system can ask questions or raise concerns with those in charge. And finally, across disciplines, we're breaking down those walls, and these standards will do an incredible amount of heavy lifting once they arrive. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Kobi. You've just touched on a few points that are coming through in our list of questions from the audience, and I'm gonna shake it up and go straight to an audience question, because I think that's where our conversation was going anyway. A questioner has asked, standards in other areas make sense to me, but what do standards for AI look like? What kind of standards have been developed to date, and what kind of things can we expect in the future? Aurelie, I'm going to kick this one over to you.
For sure. So standards focus on quality and safety. So unsurprisingly, like when you look at those two aspects, you need to focus on, especially for AI, on the data, managing the model, and managing the organizational process. So this is not new. When aviation wanted to be safer, that's what they did. And across the organization, when you want to make it safer, you work across the tech and the organizational process. So what's coming is standards around data, the model, and organizational process. The one that's published, actually, one I highly recommend if you're at the start of the conversation is 22987's Concept and Terminologies. That's been published. And effectively, it gives you an overview of the very topical question of how do we define AI and AI system? And that definition of ISO is aligned with OECD and the EU definition. So that gives you a good starting point to understand what's 50 countries agree on AI. But also, you know, when you have this conversation about bias with your data scientist or with your lawyer, sometimes you can end up in an ever-ending conversation of what the hell is bias, or what is unwanted bias. So again, this is where these standards can help. So concept and terminology, as Claire said, is a basic. It's just to agree for like with AI, you need multidisciplinary approach to AI. You can't do it just a data scientist alone. So this is really helping. This is a communication tool for an organization to speak the same language when you look at AI. So I highly recommend this one. Then obviously, if you want to, let's say fairness is a big topic. So we've got one standard that's helps you identify biases. So it gives you a free technique, but effectively, the one that's coming next is about managing those bias. So again, watch out for this one. It'll give you a lot of good practice on how to manage bias, because effectively, again, it's not just a technical piece. You can't just detect bias and then what? You stop there? No, you need to understand the requirement for each for the use case within which you develop the AI system. So that's what these standards helping you with. As Claire said, and there's a myriad of standards, so I could go through, but if I have two that I would mention, the last two would be the AI management system standard, because it allows certification. So like the privacy piece I was mentioning, it can be embedded in organization to certify AI system. It's already being looked at very closely by the EU AI Act for the certification process. That fits under the EU AI Act and other international initiatives. And the last one we've been working very closely with Kobi on is the impact assessment, an AI impact assessment. If you look at pretty much not all, but most regulatory initiative, you'll see AI impact assessment in there. So as I said, we've been doing some good work on the committee on developing what an AI impact assessment look like, and you can look forward to see this coming soon.
Thank you so much, Aurelie. I think that gave people a good sense of what's in the catalogue, so to speak, and coming down the pipeline. Aurelie, you also just touched on where our Australian experts on our committee are supporting this work internationally. Kobi, I'd like to build this out a little bit more. Could you tell us a bit more about what role Australia is playing in standard setting for AI, and how we capitalize on our strengths to maintain competitiveness?
Yeah, thanks. Obviously, our strength is not being in the correct time zone. So that's not one of our leading strengths in this area. But one of the strengths that we do have is that we have a very active, very well qualified and effective team of experts, which Aurelie and others in other teams have led very, very effectively. What we have is really the ability to come together and to provide suggestions, but also to liaise with other states. And the reason I became involved in this work is that previous international work was really exciting to me when you can start to have these conversations, not just within your own government, not within your own people, but also more globally, to bring along and to have bilaterals and multilateral conversations where we can actually make suggestions that are taken really seriously. So although we're on the grand stage a relatively small player, although we like to think of ourselves as always at the forefront, we're often far away and sometimes and often far behind. What we can do in this area is actually lead with the expertise and the experts that we have, which has been really fun.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to another audience question and throw this one to Adam. How can Standards Australia help the Australian community understand these AI standards, and how can industry get involved?
Thank you, Claire. I'm going to answer that first, and I might throw it to Louise also to give an AI group perspective on that. So, as a member of the Responsible AI Network, when we first sort of thought about how we would connect in here, there was this concept of democratising standards. So to bring the work that's being done in Australia and internationally to a much broader audience. And sort of having a look through some of the questions in the chat, the one that sort of pops into my mind is, well, are you creating another framework? No. The purpose of the work that's being done here is to integrate it into systems that enterprises use across the world. So as well as continuing to help and to promote the work of our technical experts, and I cannot speak more highly of the Australian experts who contribute to this work, I want to make sure that as we go on with it, we're getting it to the people who need to know it in a form and a style and a language that makes sense. And webinars like this are really, really important for us, but there's different sets of information and content that we need to make sure that we're having the impact on the work. Louise, I hope that's consistent with what industry would like us to be doing.
Yeah, so we, AI Group is a member of Standards Australia, and we nominate representatives onto various committees. And in fact, we have two, just here's an advertisement, 2 available spots on this AI Standards Committee. So if you're a member of AI Group, please get in touch with me. So what, and the way we do things at AI Group, we have our nominees sitting on the committee, but then we also have engagement with the broader membership group. So bringing back information from the committee and then taking forward the AI Group view, so that even though there are 2 people in the room, or 2 or 3 people in the room from AI Group, they are actually there representing the interests of as best they can all our membership. And that membership includes those who create products and build products and design products, as well as those who use it. So we've got both the consumer and the producer hat on in all those discussions.
Thank you so much, Louise. All right, next up, Adam, I'm going to throw back to you quickly. With the rapid evolution of AI technology, how can standards development keep up?
Yeah, so that's a massive question, and I might expand that to say, how can standards and regulatory environments and communities catch up? Because I think standards are a subset of it all. 3 things that we're trying to do here in Australia and internationally is first of all, not to duplicate effort or waste time. So there's only a small number of people like the panelists on this call who have time to give. So making sure that we're not wasting time and duplicating effort in the standards world. But I think that conversation extends out through sort of regulatory landscape. So if there are like-minded economies doing similar things to us, we should be trying to work together. That's the first point. The second point, and I've seen a little bit of this in the chat, is making sure we're writing the right types of standards, right? So higher level risk-based performance type standards rather than trying to prescribe is really for a couple of reasons. Firstly, so that we don't end up in sort of proprietary land where there's a winner being picked, but also to allow for the continued innovation of these systems and platforms to fit within the framework. And then the third point which is really something that we're focused on at Standards Australia, is making sure that the really good work that is being done is getting to the people who need it. So for us, that's a very big sort of system change in Australia and internationally. And it's about changing how we distribute the content. It's about changing what that content is. And it's about always remembering that there's not one size fits all, right? So to go back to the question you had at the start, how many people are familiar with standards? There are people who are deeply embedded in the standards world at a industry implementation level or at an assurance level who will know so much about the standards that, you know, people at other, so the sort of board level or the executive level, they need to know a different cut. And the more that we can change our content strategy to make sure that people are getting the information that they need, the better off we'll all be. And again, a plug for the Responsible AI Network and its partners. All of us working together on this AI piece in Australia is really, we think, going to help with that, solving that problem, or going away to solving that problem, Claire.
Thanks so much, Adam. We're going to take another audience question now. And Aurelie, I will pass this one to you. How can standards help developing legislation on AI application development? Would it include the responsible or trustworthy AI elements similar to the EU AI Act?
Perfect question. Actually, standards are already baked in one shape or form in the regulation. I'll give you a bit of background. If you look at the EU, they've actually moved away back in the 80s, in the 1980s, they moved away from black letter law to actually more principle-based law supported by standards. Right? So they're very used to actually have the law and supporting standards. They've done that for product and for safety because effectively when you use the EU, you've got many jurisdiction with many different regulation that needs to work together. What's happening with AI is we see that at the global level. If you have a super fragmented ecosystem where everyone does their own regulation, it becomes really, really hard to scale AI effectively. You can imagine you have different data regulation, you have different cyber regulation, and on top, different AI regulation, it becomes very, very tricky to scale. So I see, at least that's my perspective, I see standards as being the fabrics that built within the different jurisdiction. You see in the news, as I say, the G7 say we need we need international standards that on AI. As part of the governance, the treaties that's been between the US and the EU, they're also looking to standards to effectively ensure interoperability. So, in a nutshell, if you look at the EU AI Act, right, as I say, built into the EU AI Act, you have the law, and then under it, you have a certification piece. And who's doing the certification is Sense and Elect, the EU's standards body. Sense and Elect is sitting in the ISO standards. They're working with us, and we're working to align the work of the ISO into with them. There's a report that was published by one EU organization that actually mapped all our standards and say how they were fit to operationalize the EU AI Act. So that was a report from AI Watch back in 2020. So they already did that exercise. If you look at, as I say, as a country, as the US, they're using standards in a voluntary piece. So the beauty of standards is it's a very agile policy tool. The EU is using it under the law as a mandatory piece, but as Adam said, you can use it as a voluntary piece, so to give you best practice and to actually understand how to develop AI system well. So yes, the standards are already embedded in regulatory initiative.
Thank you so much, Aurelie. Next question I will throw to Kobi. Another audience question. There's growing academic literature considering the regulation of safe and trustworthy AI, including various workshops and conferences here and overseas. How can we ensure academic literature is making its way into these debates and considerations within governments and NGOs empowered to actually develop and enact standards. And I'm going to tack on, Kobi, another one that is related about how diversity and inclusion will be addressed in standards. Not entirely related, but both relevant to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Well, I think they do actually overlap, because there's a lot of academic work being done on diversity and inclusion and data quality, which does actually relate to a lot of the issues that are raised. So I'll start with the first question. In terms of academic input to standards, one of the beautiful things about standard is that as a reformed lawyer and reformed academic, I know exactly who sits at these tables, and they're mostly people who are experts, and a lot of them have academic expertise or regular contact with and access to academic networks. So all of the work is informed by cutting edge academic research. And this is one of the joys of this work, is being across not only what Australia is doing, but also what other countries are doing and how they're thinking about the various aspects academically. So if I can assure the audience that these standards are based on absolute cutting edge academic research, a lot of us spend a lot of time being across a wide range of topics in order to facilitate that. We also talk to each other regularly and share across our areas of expertise, which brings me personal immense satisfaction, but I think also results in far better standards longer term. The question about minorities and inclusion is a really interesting one, and it has come up regularly, particularly in relation to data quality. Data is always historical, data is always retrospective. And one of my favourite things that I saw this week was, the cartoon that said we need an AI strategy, and then someone next to them going, oh no, but first we need a data strategy. I mean, you cannot run an AI system without data, and the quality of your data, the inclusiveness of your data, the diversity in your data, but also in those reviewing the systems. To Aurelie's point, we're going to need life cycle reviews. We're going to need life cycle risk management. We're going to have boards thinking about these things. We're going to have execs thinking about these things. What we're also going to need are more and diverse voices and eyes on these systems to make sure that they're not causing harms, that we're actually managing those risks. And the standards are going to attempt to do all of those things. I think it's probably worth saying that the standards won't be perfect, but the standards are a huge step in the right direction. And to many of the other questions where people are saying, I want something for my company, they're coming, and they will be auditable, and they will change the game. They are also coming in the environmental sphere, which is another area which will overlap, which is also very data heavy. And so these standards, this interoperability of standards, is also something to really think about for those who are on the call. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Kobi. So many great questions from the audience. Thank you, everyone. I wish we had another half an hour or hour to get through them. I'm going to keep going with audience questions. How do standards cover transparency requirements as relating to understanding the data ingested or used by AI platforms? What can businesses do to ensure they are following best practice? I'm looking to Kobi, perhaps, on this one, or anyone who'd like to take it. Louise.
I think, is Kobi better placed to answer?
Sure, I'll take the hairy question about the data. I think, again, it comes back to, in terms of the AI management tool, you can't have an AI that you're accountable for, and ultimately every company is going to be responsible for the tools they use, without understanding what fuels them. And if we think of the ingestion of data as the fuel of the system, the algorithms themselves, we've seen that very basic algorithms can be quite risky and quite harmful. They don't need to be AI or complicated to cause harm, but just the data that's ingested and how it's used is really important. And so there is going to need to be an uplift in terms of reviewing that data, thinking about how that data is used, whether that data is also obtained with consent. We have a massive Privacy Act review coming down the pipeline, and I think the way that these data sources are being ingested is still being formed in Australia, but globally too, the conversation and the landscape is changing really quickly in this space, which is a very loyally answer of saying there's not a specific answer right now, but the conversation is definitely becoming more sophisticated, and companies will really need to give a lot more thought to how they ingest, connect, and correlate data.
There's a great question about certification. Adam, I will throw this one to you. When will an accredited auditing scheme be available to certify my organisation in Australia, supported by standards?
In the interest of not appearing to pass the buck, I think Aurelie is probably best placed to answer that one. Claire?
Thanks. Yes, happy to take this one. So as Claire said, the AI management system standards that provide a pathway for certification is coming into place at end 2023. When this comes into place, there's a bit of work to be done in the back to actually allow certification, but that gives you a bit of a timeline. Yet, why wait? Because effectively, you'll have that certification that's coming. So there was a few questions of how those organizations are using standards. Well, in the US, as I said, there's some organizations that are already developed a global certification initiative based on 42001. So they're already building that certification process. In Australia, you've got the New South Wales government. If you look at the New South Wales AI Assurance Framework, it's also based on the work of standards. So again, these are initiatives. So while certification is coming, it is a good idea to start considering and looking at the standards to see what are the requirements that are relevant. And the companies that have done that are actually, they've just been able to showcase their responsible AI work. So that would be my my general comment on this question.
Thank you, Aurelie. We are almost at the top of the hour. Louise, I wanted to throw one more question to you. Standards are voluntary unless they're called up in regulation or legislation. What types of collaboration between industry, academia, government is necessary, do you think, to drive the development and uptake of AI standards in Australia and globally?
Well, I think, standards drives all sorts of things, as you said, if it's captured within regulation, but also a lot of training and education frameworks rely on standards. And this is why we need, this integration that's already, everyone's talked about, this cooperation between all three areas of industry, government and academia, because this is moving very quickly. And we need to make sure that whatever stage you are in your career development, you are understanding how AI is going to impact your work life and your business and the world around you, what you can do to be, have agency within that, and to think about how you can use AI to support your endeavors, whether they're personal or business. The other thing is, as I said at the outset, no business is an island, big or small. Everyone, without trade, without doing business, you're not actually a business. So we need really this harmonization to make sure that people are, speaking the same language as identified, have the same safeguards, the same rails, because otherwise it will just be a scattergun process and we will lose the benefit of this technology.
Thanks, Louise. Food for thought for everyone, I think. It is already 2 minutes to 12. We had so many questions. So audience, thank you for your participation, and we'll see what we can do with these questions so they're not lost. First, I'd like to say a really big thank you to our panel for their insights. I think that was a great discussion, and we did get to tackle a lot of the things that were of most interest to our audience. So unfortunately, it's all we've got time for today, but as we've mentioned before, this is just the first in a series of interactual virtual events that we're running as part of our work with the Responsible AI Network in the year ahead. So we will be diving more into AI standards and their application and getting into that detail. So please do stay tuned, follow Standards Australia and the National AI Centre on social media. Have a read of our paper that's launching today, covering some of this content, an introduction to AI standards, and yeah, stay part of the conversation. One more thing, I suppose, one more resource I wanted to mention, and this is linked through the paper as well, is Standards Australia's data and digital standards dashboard. I think I mentioned it earlier. We'll pop, well, as I said, the report links to that. So go and have a play if you're really interested on linking through to the standards that are out there and what's coming. So look, once again, massive thanks to our panelists and our partners in this endeavour, the National AI Centre, and thank you all so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to more of this over the coming year. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Claire. Great session. Bye.
See you.
Bye.